of interesting news bits this morning. Again, doing what I do, drinking coffee, getting reading about the financial world, and then going to the gym after this. So, hence the sweatshirt, sweatpants. Anyway, looks like private payrolls came in much lower than expected. So they were estimate to come in about 50,000 plus. They came in less than half that at 67,000. Really what people in the article kind of pointing to is is the employment market finally turning. There were a couple of areas where the drop was significant. First was manufacturing, then commodity producers, and finally retailers. um, to me this is just the data finally catching up with what's been going on in the trade war. The trade war now has been 15 months in the making. It has impacted commodity producers, think farmers, because China simply stopped buying stuff, right? They that was their tit for tat, if you will, right? We raised tariffs, they stopped buying, and what could they do? They really only buy a couple of things, and one of them is food. So that's the answer there, and the other is manufacturing, right? We need to make more of our own stuff going forward. And the likelihood of the tariff war impacting manufacturing net positive should it get resolved is probably pretty good, but it takes time, right? Manufacturing takes time to kind of bring back. So I think a lot of this is just the data catching up. It's not good, obviously, um, but I think there's a story there. And again, we have unemployment at 3.5 or 3.4. I mean, how much lower can it go? Just you know, how much lower can it go? So it'll be interesting. I think the payroll number comes out, or the unemployment number comes out for November on Friday. So it'll be interesting to see what that has to hold. Next up, people are talking about housing in 2020, and it's interesting to see kind of what they're saying. I think the big elephant in the room that not enough people are talking about is we have a supply imbalance, right? When I look at my market and I talk to lots of you, it seems like everything kind of like 80% of the median is flying off the market. And then anything kind of at the median is certainly staying on longer. And then anything 2x the median is struggling. And I don't see that getting better, at least in my market, right? You really can't build a new home, right? Quote unquote, an affordable home. In my market's about 300, 350 minimum, and the median is 260, right? Maybe it's 265. So we just can't feed that market. The other thing that is interesting that I don't think a lot of people talk about is, um, when we had the crash back in, kind of like 08, 09, and 10, there were a lot of kind of this affordable housing sold to big hedge funds. And, the thought was always that they were going to eventually sell, right? When the market comes out, they'll cash in all of that. Really, what it appears to happen is they basically package them all up, set up the infrastructure, package them into a bond or a REIT, and have sold to the public market in one way or another. So these homes likely won't come back on the market, at least in any great numbers. So we need to fill that gap, especially if millennials start to really pick up steam and look to buy. They need something, they need inventory, right? They're first time buyers. They're not going to generally step up above the median. So we really have a supply problem. And if there's a builder out there or a city or county or state that really gets it, they could really set themselves up to have a good decade. Because I think, um, with millennials coming in and just all the stuff going on in the economy, if there is a community kind of partnered up with builders to really build affordable housing, meaning 80% of whatever the median price is, they'd sell everything they could. Now, of course, they have to make a profit and all of that stuff. So it's hard. I get it, but that would be an interesting Rubik's cube to figure out. The other thing that's interesting is people are finally agreeing with us, right? The people that watch this channel. There are going to be winners and losers next year. If you look at the past kind of, this is what housing is going to do for the next year, it's either always up or everybody's down, right? We did have a couple of years where everybody was down and now everybody was up. It looks like people are finally realizing that 2020 is going to have winners and losers. And what I mean by that is there are big medians that they're expecting to go down. San Francisco, right? We've been talking about that for 6 months now. Las Vegas, interesting. Miami, Dallas, again, areas that are, we've talked about at least in passing, being overpriced, unaffordable, and it just doesn't match the local population. And I think that's interesting. Two that were caught my attention because I was surprised was St. Louis and Detroit. I'm guessing that's because investors are going to be backing out, right? The price got above where it should. I'm just guessing. I don't know. But on this channel, I've had issue with some areas being with investors being laughed at because they're overpaying. The locals are just laughing at you. So maybe that's what's going on is people are finally relenting and moving and going backwards. So I just thought it was interesting that people finally agree with this channel that there will be some cities that go down next year and others that will go up. And I think that's going to be the rhythm for the entire decade of 2020s, which, gosh, I can't believe is 4 weeks away. Next up, another disappointing number, right? We had private payrolls that were down, or at least lower than expected. We also have November non-manufacturing ISM. It just came out, so I haven't read the news yet. Just the number came out. It came out at 53.9 instead of 54.5. To note, that's still expansion, right? Anything over 50 is an expansion. It's just not as enough of an expansion as expected. Again, I think November is going to come out to be a noisy month, right? We had the data coming from the trade war and all of those things, and just lots of stuff going on. I think it's going to be interesting to see how we go into next year. I still expect next year to be an up year. I think we are going to get this trade war done. It's interesting that yesterday, the market's down 400 because we're not going to do anything till next year or after the next election. Remember that? I kind of laughed at that. I said, no chance. And look at that. This morning it came out and said, oh, we're really close. Just negotiations in theater for all of us to freak out about. So that was interesting. Um, so yeah, I think a deal gets done. I don't think anybody wants the tariffs to go into effect on the 14th. I don't think it helps either side. I expect a skinny or a small deal to get done. I expect it to be mainly for us around our agriculture, which is really a commodities producer. I expect China to get less taxes or tariffs on some of their stuff, so it should be interesting. And then two more things. First off, Carl Icahn is basically telling HP shareholders to rattle the cage of the board. If you remember, I think we talked about this a month ago, where Xerox came in and is trying to buy HP. They're about one third the size, but have the money and deal put together. And HP's board saying no, which is interesting, right? You're a public company. You're basically for sale every day. So I think one of two things are going to happen. Either HP, there's one of three things that are going to happen. One is Xerox going to win, right? Xerox has a public market. The shareholders can agree, and Xerox could buy them. It'll be messy. The board's not going to give up easily, um, but it probably should go that way if the price is right and the money is there, right? The money's green. You've got to take care of your shareholders. At least that's how I always understood the public markets. Two, I still believe there's a small chance that HP, given its size, goes, you know what? Let's just buy them. Right? I'm positive that's happened. The question is, do they have the ability to pull off I don't know, such a thing? I think they can. I don't know if they want to. I think they're going to feel like they're backed into a corner. But again, if they are so inclined and they quote unquote want to keep their cushy jobs, they could absolutely go, you know what, Xerox, we're going to buy you. You're the smaller one. Come in. You've got some interesting patents or whatever. We'll buy you. And then the other one is something that was really popular in the 80s that I'm just going back and researching because I think, at least in my lifetime, the next decade could have some signs of the 80s. Is just because, this leveraged debt or high debt is like loans and all of that could come around. is they could figure out a way to buy Carl Icahn out. It used to be called green mail back in the 80s, where basically a someone like Carl Icahn would come in, be an instigator. They'd get, 5, 8, 7% of the company. And basically what would happen is, in this case, HP would pull Carl Icahn aside and say, hey, we're going to give you a special deal. We're going to buy your shares at a premium. We're going to give you voting rights, whatever it is, right? It's not quite blackmail. That's why the new name green mail, because it's about money. But that could happen. Um, I do not recall if any legislation got put into place that would prevent something like that. It may have to be done differently. But I do remember all of those stories and reading about them. The Barbarians of the Gate, I think, was the book that talked about Philip Morris and RJR Nabisco, I think it was. So lots of stuff going on. And then the last thing is a question for you. I'm not a stock person. I never will be a stock person. It's not my bag. But I saw an article and I wanted your guys' opinion. This particular stock analyst said Tesla is a must own. And a must own meaning you need to own it for the next 2 years. It's not a trade, right? It's a must own. So what do you think? I don't know what Tesla is at today. A couple hundred, $300 a share. I don't know. But it strikes me that any stock could be a must own. But I don't know. I thought I would ask all of you. Do you own Tesla? Would you buy Tesla here? All the good news priced in, all the craziness priced out. I don't know. I haven't looked at it. Don't own stock. Won't own stock. But the headline caught my attention. I thought I would ask you. So let me know in the comments below. Is Tesla a must own for you? Yes or no? Just curious. All right, everybody. That's what I got today. Have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow.